job, Abby. All right, neither side blinking in the U.S.-China showdown. Beijing is hitting back with new tariffs, and trade is just one aspect of this escalating fight. Good morning. I'm Dana Perino. Bill is off. I got my best friend.
Hello there. Good morning, Dana. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Great to be with you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and of course, this is America's Newsroom. So China raising their tariffs on American imports to 125. That's a lot. This after President Trump hit Chinese imports all the way up to 145 as of yesterday afternoon. The president signaling that he is optimistic, though, on eventually reaching a deal with China. U.S. Trade Representative, very interesting interview with him this morning. Jamieson Greer says this has to happen in one way, shape, or form. Watch.
Do import a lot from China, and that actually, to me, underscores the urgency of the situation. We've become so dependent on this. If we can only maintain our standard of living by being dependent on China, who is a strategic adversary, that's a very dangerous position to be in, and so we need to accelerate this.
Peter Doocy, live from the White House. Peter, what do you know this morning?
Dana, the Chinese Commerce Ministry is now saying they think these tariffs have become a joke. But President Trump is basically saying that he thinks with trade deals imminent, the joke is on them.
So how close are you to the first country coming to actually make a deal with the United States over tariffs? Is it days, months?
Well, I think it's very close, but, we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to.
Well, it's beginning. The Vietnamese delegation is here. Scott Bessent posts during today's meeting to confirm start of formal negotiations on reciprocal trade with Deputy Prime Minister Ho Duc Phoc of Vietnam. I emphasized the need for continued engagement and quick, demonstrable progress to resolve outstanding issues. And even though various reporting about the president's 90-day pause include details about Scott Bessent now taking the lead and Peter Navarro taking a back seat, one of those guys is saying that's not so.
The media says you're in the doghouse with Trump. Is that true? Or is that fake news?
That's fake news, Jesse. I think the American people, I want to say to the American people, 90 trade deals in 90 days, you're in great hands, not just with President Trump, who is the commander-in-chief and chief deal maker, but with the people who are involved.
Trade deals typically take months or years each to negotiate. The president and his team are trying to get dozens done in several weeks, and President Trump will not rule out extending the 90-day pause if they need to. We do expect to see him at some point next hour on his way to the annual physical at Walter Reed. Dana?
Yep, that happens every year. And then are they planning to do a press conference after that physical?
We don't know the exact plan. It probably wouldn't be today because he's off to Florida right away. But last time he had a physical, they did send his doctor at the time, Ronnie Jackson, out to the microphone, and he took questions for like an hour. I believe that he said something to the effect of President Trump would live to 200 if he just cut out the McDonald's. So we will stay tuned for that.
Now, Peter, I have Martha here with me, and I don't think she's seen this yet. We had a kind of a situation this morning. Let's watch it.
Yeah, Peter, I appreciate it.
A bird just landed on my head.
What is going on? What was that about?
You handled that very, very well, Peter.
Yeah, why me? Huh?
Because you're the tallest.
Look at that.
Yeah, and it's an old TV trick, just try to make your hair look like a bird's nest. I did, though. It's funny. A couple minutes ago, I got a text about that from the Interior Secretary's team, and they say that they have deployed all assets from the Park Service and Fish and Wildlife to figure out what's going on. So we will be standing by here at the scene of the crime for that.
I like the freeze shot of it actually sitting on your head. It thought you were a tall building, Peter.
I feel like I'm going to have to take a shower before I take my daughter to ballet today. Just get the bird off me.
Peter, thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, guys.
So anti-Israel protester Mahmoud Khalil set to return to the courtroom today for a deportation hearing. An immigration judge will decide whether the government provided enough evidence to remove the Columbia grad from the United States. Brooke Taylor live from Gina, Louisiana. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Martha. Yeah, all eyes on Louisiana right now to see what this immigration judge is going to rule. This is basically going to set the precedent on whether the federal government is able to successfully deport these students who participated in these disruptive and anti-Israel protests. So the Department of Homeland Security submitted this piece of key evidence, a 2-page memo signed off by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. In that memo, Rubio reiterating that he's using an immigration law that lets him deport any alien considered a threat to U.S. foreign policy. In that memo, he says, quote, these determinations are based on information regarding the participation and roles of Khalil in anti-Semitic protests and disruptive activities, which fosters a hostile environment for Jewish students in the United States. Well, Khalil's attorneys quick to push back after that memo was released.
2 pages. That's it. And in that, Secretary of State Rubio says that Mahmoud's presence here would create adverse foreign policy interests. But what does he talk about? He talks about First Amendment activity in the United States and the effect on people in the United States.
During Thursday's cabinet meeting, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said no one is entitled to a student visa.
If you come to this country as a student, we expect you to go to class and study and get a degree. If you come here to vandalize a library, take over a campus and do all kinds of crazy things, we're going to get rid of these people.
And the judge now going to decide whether or not the government provided sufficient evidence. If the immigration judge rules that he is removable, the case moves on to what's called the relief stage, where Khalil's attorneys can still litigate his right to remain in the United States. On the other hand, if the judge rules that Khalil is not removable, this case basically gets terminated. Khalil will eventually be released, even though we expect the federal government to appeal that. But again, a lot of pressure right now on the government to see if they provided enough evidence and what this immigration judge is going to rule, guys.
Yeah. Brooke, thank you very much. Brooke Taylor.
And House Republicans passing a bill to stop non-citizens from voting. They did it on a near party line vote. Democrats continue to fight the legislation as it heads to the Senate. This despite polls showing large numbers support it. Mary Catherine Ham is with us. Thank you for being here. Let me just show you these numbers. 84% favor requiring a photo ID to vote, and 83% requiring proof of citizenship when registering to vote for the first time. I mean, it's hard to get this many Americans to agree on something, Mary Catherine.
No, it's true, and Democrats are out here fighting for fraudulent votes like that bird is fighting Peter's hair. And I just think it's not a great look for them, because when you are on the wrong side of an 85%-ish issue, that's going to be a lonely place if you're a Democrat. And this is like the number 2 thing that Democrats delude themselves is controversial, right? One is protecting the border. That's number 1. And number 2 is having ID to vote. It's not controversial. 36 states have it already. Many voters, non-white voters, voters in blue states are totally fine with the idea of having ID to vote. There are some Democrats who say, okay, well, this is not necessary because it's not a huge problem. But again, the problem with the border has created the potential for a problem that bothers a lot of Americans. And standing on the other side of it and saying, we're going to use the formerly racist filibuster, which they're now for again, to fight the idea that you can protect real American voters, I think is not going to look great for them.
Mary Catherine, yesterday I interviewed Senator Alyssa Slotkin, and she did not vote on this in the House, she said, and would not support it in the Senate. Here's why.
I didn't vote on it in the House, and if it comes to the Senate, I won't vote on it for the simple reason that it requires, again, a specific list of ID that you can use at the voting booth. Your driver's license is not good enough. You either have to use your birth certificate or your passport. Well, 60% of Michiganders don't have a passport. And for 80% of women in this country who are married, they've changed their name from their birth certificate. So it makes it harder to have women vote.
What do you think about those big barriers, Mary Catherine?
Yeah, I feel like I can handle it, but if I'm not mistaken, I have to fact check this, but I think it's at the point of registration. It's not necessarily at the booth. But this is Democrats' messaging always on this: is that the people that have to show ID are incapable of showing ID, and they particularly target minority and women voters as incapable of doing this. And I don't think that the facts show that that's the case. I am quite a bit more charitable to minority and women voters and their ability to be able to manage these things. And again, that's one of the reasons that 83% of people are fine with this idea.
And there was also this yesterday, Mary Catherine. Elon Musk was at the cabinet meeting. He was talking about the kind of reductions that they're seeing, which I think was a lower target than initially talked about. He's talking about $150 billion now. Watch.
I'm excited to announce that we anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. And I mean, and some of it is just absurd. Like people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet. Some of these things, people ask me like, well, how are you going to find waste and fraud in the government? I'm like, well, actually, just go in any direction. That's how you find it. It's very common.
So that number at $150 billion, so that would be for FY26. Again, a lot of people support this, but that number is lower than what they were claiming initially.
Yeah, but he's right about the fact that you can look around pretty much anywhere and find fraud in the federal government. One of the only things the federal government is innovative at is finding creative ways to rip off taxpayers. And I appreciate that DOJ is digging into the numbers and finding out that people are on unemployment that should not be on unemployment. Now, is some of that a clerical error? Is some of it data entry problems? Yes. But one of the issues with the federal government is that they do things so incompetently when it comes to data cleaning and data entry that they leave the field open for all sorts of fraud. So people can jump in there without being caught. Every one of those dollars is an American taxpayer's dollars. And when people say, oh, this is chump change, well, tell that to somebody who's never seen $1 million before, right? $1 million isn't chump change to regular people who are trying to live their lives. And it comes from them. It is the duty of the American government to protect their money. And by the way, another question for those who are against DOJ looking through the books is, are you okay with any amount of fraud in the American federal government taking money from those who most need it, for whom these programs are designated? That question should be asked and answered.
Hopefully that would be 100% no, but we know how it goes. Mary Catherine Ham, thank you.
Well, it seems.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Mary Catherine.
And the Supreme Court issuing a new order to the Trump administration over a migrant deported to El Salvador. It's stoking more tensions over the controversy, what the justices are saying ahead. And there's also this.
Aircraft flew south before turning to fly north along the Manhattan shoreline up the Hudson River. The aircraft lost control and hit the water just a few feet off the coast of Pier A Park in Hoboken. The cause of the crash is currently under investigation.
The New York Post headline says it all: nightmare over Hudson. The latest on the deadly helicopter crash and the search for answers of how this happened.
Plus, President Trump stepping up his attacks against sanctuary cities, threatening to hit them hard where it hurts, and that would be the pocketbook.
Since Trump took office, that, God help these sanctuary cities, because Pam Bondi's going to be all over them, suing them. President Trump's going to take their federal funding away. We're going to hold them accountable. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. Bottom line.
A plane bumps wings with another plane on the ground at Reagan National Airport. 6 members of Congress were on board, all of them from New York or New Jersey. Democrat Grace Meng and Republican Nick LaLota posted on X about the incident. American Airlines says no one was hurt, adding that both planes just returned to the gates.
Meanwhile, the tragedy in the skies over the Hudson River yesterday afternoon. 6 people are dead after a tourist helicopter carrying a family from Spain. The father was an executive from Siemens, and that upper picture is this beautiful family as they were getting ready to take off. The husband, the wife, 3 young children, along with the pilot, all lost their lives in this tragic helicopter ride. Nate Foy live in Jersey City, New Jersey, with the very latest on this. Hi, Nate.
Hey, Martha. Dive teams will be back in the water today as they continue collecting pieces of the helicopter that fell apart midair and then plunged into the Hudson River yesterday. You mentioned killing 6 people, including a family of 5 visiting New York City from Spain. And the mayor of Jersey City this morning revealed that the family was celebrating the 40th birthday of the mother with a helicopter ride over the city. Take a look at these pictures into our newsroom today. According to the AP, the father was a Siemens executive, as you mentioned, named Agustin Escobar. His wife, Merce, was a global manager at an energy technology company. And you see their 3 young children here. They all died on vacation. I warn our viewers, the crash video is disturbing. Take a look. The helicopter falls out of the sky upside down with no tail rotor and no main rotor blade either. President Donald Trump reacted to the crash video, posting, quote, "The footage of the accident is horrendous. God bless the families and friends of the victims. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy and his talented staff are on it. Announcements as to exactly what took place and how will be made shortly." Here's Mayor Eric Adams reacting to the tragedy.
Just think about it. You're on a vacation, you're with your family, you want to experience New York from the sky, and something like this happens. It's heartbreaking to everyone.
The New York helicopter tour flight began in downtown Manhattan. Then it traveled north before turning around past the George Washington Bridge. Then, while traveling south on its way back, it crashed. Investigators today will collect more pieces of the helicopter after they used a boat with a crane to remove the fuselage from the Hudson last night. Now, back out here live, take a look. You can see authorities back on scene with a Coast Guard boat right next to some NYPD Marine units. The NTSB is leading this investigation with support from the FAA. Transportation Secretary Duffy is in New Jersey today. He has an 11 o'clock pre-planned event. We'll see if he says anything and provides an update on the investigation. We'll send it back to you, Martha.
Your heart goes out to that family and also to the FDNY divers who went in there and tried their hardest to save this family. It's a real tragedy. Nate, thank you very much.
For sure. You got it.
I want to bring in Matthew Wiz Buckley. He's a retired Navy Top Gun fighter pilot and chairman of the No Fallen Heroes Foundation. Thanks for being here today. I want to play one more thing from a witness who saw the scene.
We had witnesses telling us that the helicopter seemed as if to stop in midair and there were pieces of the helicopter falling off before it actually hit the water. Have you heard of that? Do you know why? As part of this investigation?
You have anything?
Yeah, I think the entire incident is under investigation by the NTSB and the FBI and obviously local authorities as well.
Is that something though that you have seen, that you have heard witness accounts of?
It's consistent with 911 calls and witness reports.
So, but what Tish was just saying there is that the witness who said that they witnessed the helicopter breaking apart was consistent with other things that they had heard from 911. Wiz, what do you think happened here?
Well, good morning, Dana. It's just absolutely devastating. There are so many moving parts in a helicopter, and all of those parts need to work flawlessly every second that the motor is turning. Helicopter pilots actually have a term for one of the pieces. It's called the Jesus nut. It connects it's the main rotor retaining nut, and they half-jokingly call it the Jesus nut because if that thing fails, there's absolutely nothing they can do. So the tail rotor, the tail boom separating, and the main rotor separating means something absolutely catastrophic happened to this helicopter, and there's just simply nothing they could have done. Helicopters, if they do have a problem with the motor, they can auto-rotate, and this helicopter was equipped with floats. They could have landed safely in the Hudson, but since none of that happened, in order to auto-rotate, you have to have a rotor, and both of those rotors were gone, sadly.
I see. Nate Foy mentioned that Transportation Secretary Duffy will be in New Jersey today. He already was going to be here, and then he is going to add something here. He said this, that the tour helicopter was in a special flight rules area established in New York, which means no air traffic control services were being provided when the helicopter crashed. Several minutes prior to entering the special flight rules area, air traffic control from LaGuardia Airport was providing support. Would that have mattered here?
No, Dana, they allow these tour helicopters to have their own little Battle of Britain airspace. They're allowed to fly around without having to talk to anybody. Otherwise, it's really going to overload the controllers in an already busy area. So they operate under these special rules. But Dana, these tour helicopters, they're workhorses. These things are up, down throughout the day. And with that amount of flying, you really, really have to be on top of the maintenance. So those divers and the NTSB are going to be trying to find every piece of this helicopter to try and literally put it back together to see why it came apart.
You know, there is a temptation from, I think it's a human temptation, maybe also partly the media, but it does feel like we have covered a lot of these high profile incidents of late. We'll put them up on the board for people to see. You don't necessarily need to remind everybody. But we had a series in January and February, and that mostly dealt with planes, but then this helicopter. In general, though, air travel, pretty safe.
Danny, you nailed it. It's passé to say, but it's the truth. It is more dangerous driving to and from the airport. There are approximately 120,000 folks that die, sadly, every day in car crashes. Thank God there isn't 120 people dying every day in aviation mishaps. I think the advent, now sound like I'm old, the advent of cell phones and closed circuit, we're seeing videos. If it bleeds, it leads. So seeing all the cell phone footage of this definitely makes the horror hit closer to home. But I've been in aviation close to 40 years, and only for about half of that have we had this type of technology to be Johnny on the spot to see it all. So I think that helps it hit a lot harder when we can see the pictures before these folks got in this airplane. I mean, God bless these souls. It's just absolutely devastating. But I think the technology is bringing these mishaps a little closer to home than they used to in the past.
Wiz, thank you. Your expertise is always greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? There is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do. There is such great significance to the passage of time, unburdened by what has been. What is possible unburdened by what has been?
Unburdened by the past, Kamala Harris reportedly eyeing a political comeback. Could it be the governor's mansion in California, or is she going to hold out for the presidency? Plus this.
The bully in the White House. The bully in the White House. It was just
I'm a Democrat. I've been a Democrat.
Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your advocacy.
We'll tell you what was going on there. A California mom confronting a lawmaker on protecting fairness in women's sports. She's here to tell her story in the next hour. Kamala Harris reportedly telling allies that she is down but not out. The New York Times reporting that Harris is trying to return to politics after the stinging defeat last fall. The headline reads, sidelined and still processing her defeat, Harris looks for a way back in. So does the former VP have a path forward? Let's bring in someone from the other side of the aisle to analyze this. Senior RNC advisor Danielle Alvarez. Danielle, great to see you. Thanks for being here. This is a piece from a Harris insider, this quote, to Vanity Fair, who wrote a very glowing piece about her potential return. And it says, I think she deserves to be part of that conversation. She's earned the right to put her thumb on the scale of what's next here. Democrats in general are lacking messengers who have name and ID and respect. And I think people need to remember that she only lost the popular vote by 1.5%. Your thoughts?
You know, that's absolutely laughable. It shows that the Democrats have no bench. They have no path forward. Kamala Harris is someone who became the Democrat nominee without having won a single primary state, a single delegate. She also didn't earn a single primary state and a single delegate when she made that same attempt to earn the Democrat nominee in 2020. She's someone who was crowned, the nominee of the Democrat Party. And she got walloped in every single battleground state. Kamala Harris was defeated. She lost the popular vote. She hemorrhaged with minority voters, Hispanic voters, black voters, young voters, old voters, female voters, male voters. I'm not sure what the path for Kamala Harris is, but the reality is that Democrats have no one. They have no bench, and she really would have a path up the middle in a Democrat primary should she compete, because they're absolutely failing.
You know, it seems to me that the Democrats rise, they're big stars when you look over the past couple of decades. You know, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, people who really weren't on the radar before their process started for the next presidential election. And my guess is that it's going to be someone like that, because one thing that those two people have is authenticity. and I think that's something that Kamala Harris had a tough time with. This kind of story isn't going to help that too much. This is from a new book that describes her dark arts operation to secure the VP slot in 2020. And here's a quote from that. In 2020, when she beat out a crowded field to join Biden's ticket, Biden advisors ran a dark arts campaign operation to undermine the competition. Negative information on her rivals. Quote, we stabbed Karen Bass a little bit. We stabbed Susan Rice a little bit. We stabbed Stacey Abrams a little bit. One advisor says of the effort 4 years earlier, we stabbed Gretchen Whitmer. That's going to alienate a few friends, I would imagine.
That's absolutely right. And listen, the reality is that politics is a brutal sport. So I understand that having failed miserably in her 2020 effort to earn the Democrat nomination, she might have elbowed and edged others out. It certainly won't make her any friends. But the reality is that she wasn't qualified to serve in the White House. And we saw that after 4 years of failure. I know that the American people and the country is grateful to have President Trump back at the helm with a roaring economy, with peace on the international stage, a secure border. Everything is heading in the right direction. And I know that everyone is ready to close the book and turn the page on Kamala Harris.
Well, we'll see what she decides. Maybe it's a race for governor in California, and Democrats will no doubt be working hard to shake things up and come up with a candidate. They've got a little time to do that right now. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Bye, Danielle.
And we are awaiting a hearing for Eric and Lyle Menendez. The brothers were convicted of murdering their parents in 1989. They're expected to find out today whether a judge is willing to consider reducing their sentences. Jonathan Hunt on the case with more. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, good morning, Dana. This is the courthouse at which Eric and Lyle Menendez were found guilty of murder 30 years ago, and it is at this courthouse today that they hope they might take another step on the path to freedom if the judge decides to go ahead with a full resentencing hearing. But the Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman opposes resentencing, arguing Eric and Lyle Menendez have still failed to tell the truth about their actions and motives when they brutally murdered their parents at the family's Beverly Hills home in 1989.
Unless you exhibit full insight into all the criminal actions that you've taken and all the lies you've told, that at that point you've been rehabilitated and you don't constitute an unreasonable risk of danger to society. The Menendezes are not there.
But the brothers and many of their family members argue enough is enough. They say they've served 3 decades. They say they're different men than they were back in the 1980s and 90s. And they say they have been exemplary inmates.
We are demanding that the law be followed. Because whether Hochman likes it or not, California law demands that judges consider the full picture. Their youth at the time, the abuse they endured, and the men they have become.
Ultimately, though, whatever happens here today, the brothers almost certainly will have to appear before the state parole board, and the final decision on freedom likely to be up to California Governor Gavin Newsom acting on or ignoring the recommendations of that parole board. Now, Eric and Lyle Menendez are currently scheduled for a hearing in front of the parole board on June 13th, and the governor's decision could come within days of that appearance. So their supporters certainly, and the men themselves, hope they'll be home sometime this summer. Dana?
Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
So China continues to try to undermine the United States. A Wall Street Journal report today revealing that Beijing was behind a string of cyber attacks during the Biden years. Is our infrastructure at risk as a result of this Volt Typhoon attack? Plus this.
It's a question of what do you care about more, sunshine and joy and fun and money, or health, mental health, physical health? Senator Scott's bill does a version of that by picking daylight savings times, but then letting states opt out.
A look at the bipartisan drive to give Americans more daylight coming up next. Congress looking to freeze time a bit. A bipartisan group of senators pushing to standardize daylight savings time. You've heard about this for a long time, right? They want to change it so that the clocks turning back your clock will be a thing of the past. Chad Pergram live from Capitol Hill with more on this and how it might change our lives. A little more sunlight. Hey, Chad.
Martha, good morning. Switching the clock twice a year is truly the only issue which affects all Americans. President Trump has advocated for eliminating the time change. Lawmakers are trying to decide if they should lock the clock.
I mean, who hasn't forgotten to change their clock on their microwave? I think mine is still on the wrong time. And felt the immediate panic of waking up late for work.
Now get this, if you're a convict, the time change is bad. The University of Washington found that every sentence handed down across the country during an 11-year period was tougher on the Monday after Americans lost an hour of sleep in March.
That one seemingly harmless government mandate, dialing our clocks back 1 hour, means some people receive harsher sentences than they otherwise would.
Now, they're playing the Masters this weekend. Groups like the National Golf Course Owners Association want a plan which allows for more daylight in the evenings. That enables people to golf later. They say it would add 23 million rounds of golf each year.
So they'll have better lives as business owners. They'll be able to pay the bills a little bit better and reinvest in their businesses if they had a little bit of a boost more in the afternoons and evenings.
But daylight is finite, and Congress cannot change that. It's always going to be too dark or too early somewhere. Martha?
True. Chad, thank you very much.
True.
The Biden administration knew very well that China was behind these cyber attacks. What did the Biden administration do about it? Nothing. I mean, this is the problem. For years, China has been eating our lunch, stealing our jobs, taking our industries, taking our technology, cheating on trade. Joe Biden didn't do a thing.
A stunning revelation. China reportedly admitting during a secret meeting that Beijing was behind a series of cyber attacks against the U.S. due to its support for Taiwan. It apparently happened last December while President Biden was still in office. All this according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. Joining us now is Mike Gallagher. He's head of defense at Palantir, and you used to chair the China committee in the House. Does any of this surprise you?
Not at all. We've known for years, really going all the way back to the hack of the Office of Personnel Management, that China has penetrated our systems. Now we know that they've penetrated our critical infrastructure. The last hearing we held on the Select Committee on China with the FBI director, the head of the NSA, openly testifying about these so-called typhoon attacks. But imagine, if you will, that we had someone go around the United States with backpacks filled with dynamite, taping those to grid systems, to water utilities, right? That would cause a ton of panic. Well, effectively, that's what China has done with pre-positioned cyber weapons. And imagine if we find ourselves in a confrontation with China, for example, over Taiwan, the panic that would ensue if Americans came to question the reliability of critical infrastructure, the reliability of the water that they drink coming out of the faucet, which could be tampered with via cyber weapons, which is why, as I've said before, in some meaningful sense, the invasion of Taiwan has already begun in cyberspace, and the American homeland would be a target. So we have to not only have full transparency around what's going on here, we have to push back. We have to develop the capability to degrade, if not destroy entirely, the Great Firewall, in the same way that in the old Cold War, taking down the wall, the Berlin Wall, was a key cornerstone of American foreign policy.
Do you think that tariffs are the way to do that?
I think tariffs can be an effective tool. I think the 301 tariffs against China were the result of a very detailed and prolonged investigation during the first Trump administration. And I think for those tariffs to be successful, we need to also go further and cut off the outbound flow of American investment to China. Because right now, despite everything we've learned about China's cyber attacks against America, about China covering up the origins of the coronavirus pandemic and costing us trillions of dollars and millions of lives in the process, American investors continue to subsidize Chinese military technology, right? China's building the world's largest navy. Those ships might as well have American asset manager names stamped on the side of them, because we allow ourselves to fund our own destruction. At the same time, we also need to do a better job of uniting the free world together in opposition to China's predatory practices. But there's no question that for too long, since we allowed China's accession to the WTO, we've allowed their their economic warfare against us to go unresponded to.
Mike, can you respond to this? We had Andrew Kerr on yesterday. He's from the Washington Free Beacon, and he reported this story that you might have been aware about, these military members who apparently had COVID symptoms way back in September of 2019.
We had a military delegation that competed in the World Military Games in Wuhan in October of 2019, and 7 of those members came down with COVID-19-like symptoms. Just another piece of evidence that it indicates that no, the bat coronavirus research lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that just so happened to be a few miles away from these games where these service members got sick, more likely that is the cause of this virus.
2 things occur to me here. One is, why did the Biden administration basically bury this report completely? And 2, when you're talking about uniting the free world against China, this could be one of the factors in that.